All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. This video is from MS Now. This came out 16 hours ago. It's entitled Christian Supremacy. Okay, Christian Edomite Supremacy. It says White House blurs church and state with 9-hour prayer rally. Let's get into it.
All right, so a 9-hour prayer event has become the latest focal point of the Trump administration's blurring line between the separation of church and state. The event, titled Rededicate 250, a national jubilee of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving, drew large crowds today at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It is part of the White House's push to celebrate America's 250th birthday. Donald Trump made a quick appearance reciting a Bible verse and a pre-recorded message, while lawmakers and faith leaders also addressed the crowd.
America has become morally rotten, completely sick with sin, transgenderism, same-sex marriage, opening women's locker rooms.
In recent years, we've seen sinister ideologies sow confusion and discord among our people, that this story can only be understood through the lens of our sins.
Man, this place is over, man. You hear what he said? And America's responsible for pushing that, right? Let me go back to that real quick.
Rotten, completely sick with sin, transgenderism, same-sex marriage, opening women's locker rooms.
In recent years, we've seen
and that's something that you Edomites pushed. Okay, see, this whole 250-year prayer rededication to America is a complete joke, man. All right, this place is cooked. There's no going back, right? Revelation 18:5. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yahweh Shem Yahushai have remembered her iniquities, right? NLT. For her sins are piled as high as heaven, and the Most High remembers her evil deeds, right? So there's no coming back. Okay? Job 14:4. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one. All right? So there's nothing they can do to try to revamp, to try to so-called Christianize America again. It's a done deal. All right, this is a filthy fucking place, man, and it has to be destroyed. But as you see, these Edomites are doing everything they can to keep this place alive, man. It's not going to work. All right, no prayers for the wicked. Okay, no peace unto the wicked, right? This is Sirach or Ecclesiastes chapter 34, verse 4. It says, of an unclean thing, what can be cleansed? Okay, this place cannot be cleansed. And from that thing which is false, what truth can come? All right, this place is a fucking lie, man. All right, and this is why the Lord is soon to destroy it. Okay, these Edomites, they're finished, man. So-called white Jesus and Christian Edomite supremacy is over. Okay.
America's 250th birthday. Donald Trump made a quick appearance reciting a Bible verse and a pre-recorded message, while lawmakers and faith leaders also addressed the crowd.
America has become morally rotten, completely sick with sin, transgenderism, same-sex marriage, opening women's locker rooms.
In recent years, we've seen sinister ideologies sow confusion and discord among our people, that this story can only be understood through the lens of our sins. But Father, we reject that.
We have always been and still are a nation of prayer, and thank God for that.
Joining us now is Brad Onishi, co-host of the Straight White American Jesus podcast. He's also the author of the upcoming book, American Caesar, How Theocrats Tech.
The Straight White American Jesus podcast. You see, these Edomites, they're desperate. All right, they're losing. You know, nothing they can do.
Lords are turning America into a monarchy, which is out in stores this September. Brad, it's great to have you on the show. Talk to us a little bit about how you see this prayer event. Prayer events are not unusual in the United States. And so, I just wanted to get your reading of how this event was. Was it more than just a simple prayer gathering? Was there something more to it based on what was said and who was there?
Well, let's start with what's new and what's not new. There have been, as you mentioned, religious events on the National Mall going back a long time. And there has been this idea of a dedication of the United States to God. What is new, however, is that this kind of event would have the full-throated sponsorship of the federal government and the presidential administration. We saw today the appearance of numerous Trump administration figures, whether it was Pete Hegseth, whether it was J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, or Marco Rubio. Now, I do think there is something more here. This was billed as a rededication of the country to God. And I want to note two things. First, you can't rededicate something to God that was never dedicated to God in the first place.
There you go. There you go. That's it. Right? Let me grab something real quick. Jeremiah 51. Let's start at verse 6. Jeremiah 51:6, it says, "Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahweh's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense." All right? This is the time that Babylon be rewarded. All right? With destruction. All right? Verse 7. "Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken." All right? As we saw in the beginning of the video, he was talking about, the immoral acts of Babylon and sodomy and transgenderism. Okay, America, Babylon is responsible for pushing that spirit amongst the world, and this is why the Lord is going to reward this place. All right. It says Jeremiah 51:7 again. It says, "Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken her of her wine. Therefore, the nations are mad." Verse 8, the point. "Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain. If so, she may be healed." Verse 9, "We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the sky." So there's no getting around that, man. Okay? Judgment has been set against Babylon the Great, America. All right? There's no revamping. There's no rededication prayer. Okay, there's nothing, man. Okay, this place has been left to be completely destroyed. Right? It said, "Forsake her and let us go everyone in his own country," right? Which is heavy too, because people are tired of America, Babylon, right? Let me pull that up real fast. Right? I saw this earlier from CNBC.com. It says Americans are leaving the U.S. in record numbers and spending hundreds to learn how to do it. All right, people are getting the hell up out of here. Okay, because people see that this economy is about to tank. Okay, society is about to collapse. And those who have money, right, they're getting up out of here. But it's not going to help them anyway, because once they collapse all these economies around the world, all right, all nations are on board for the implementation of that beast system. So all these so-called Americans that left, they're still going to be affected when they bring this system to pass. All right, there's no escaping it. Is the point. Let's go back here, right?
1787 Constitutional Convention. There was a few delegates who wanted to bring in clergy and have prayers at the convention and so on. And that motion was never taken up. What we got from that convention was a constitution that gave the authority in this country to we the people. Now, it doesn't mean that there weren't founding fathers who were people of faith. It doesn't mean that religion and Christianity have not played an influential and important role in our country's history. It means, however, that...
Yeah, it definitely did, because Christianity came with the sword. All right, and Ed0mite supremacy. And the so-called founding fathers were all wicked. All right, there were Satanists. There were, so-called Freemasons. All right, this place was established off the rape, robbery, and murder of the Lord's people. All right, and Babylon's going to pay. America's going to pay. It is what it is.
This country was never dedicated to God in the ways that they say. And in not being dedicated to God, the authority was always given to us. And so for me, there's something more here in trying to take away the authority of the people and put it in the hands of a narrow conception of the divine, so that the people who represent that God can take the power from us.
Brad, I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Matthew Taylor. He studies much of the same movements that you do. He made a kind of field guide for reporters who would be covering this Rededicate 250 event. And part of it, he wrote, it's one piece of a broader effort inside and outside the Trump administration to use federal power to Christianize, or as they would have it, re-Christianize the nation. What do you think it says that I guess Taylor felt he had to create a kind of guide for reporters to even talk about this? I mean, reporters cover this administration and these figures all the time. They frankly should know more about the radical religious factions that have been organizing for quite a long while for this moment. So what do you think it says that he had to release something like this to help people just understand what they were seeing?
Well, I think what Matt Taylor has done in his work for a long time is help to decode what to many appear to be a diverse set of religious actors in the Trump administration and orbit, many of whom are somewhat confusing to the outsider, many of whom are hard to understand, and who use messages and symbols and flags that are just in many ways not legible to the uninitiated. But I think the really important piece about Matt's article was the idea of re-Christianizing the United States is not A, based in history, and B, it's based in an attempt to motivate a present and a future in which a certain type of Christian, not all American Christians, a certain type that aligns with the Trump administration and MAGA Nation.
Yeah, this is what it's about. They're trying to revitalize Edomite supremacy, all right, in the guise of Christianity, all right, this far right, Christian nationalism. This is what they're trying to push, all right, but it's not going to work. You see?
Well, they are the ones who are the real Americans and the real people of faith. What Matt points out, I think rightly, is that we've gone past Christian nationalism to a form of Christian supremacy that says unless you align with this kind of religion and with this government's understanding of religion, well, then you're not a real American and you're not a real person of faith. And you need to understand yourself as outside the mainstream of our history, of our present, and our future. And I think that's what makes it incredibly dangerous.
Brad, Pew Research Center.
Yeah, these Edomites, they're ready to lose it, man. All right, let me get something real quick. I was just thinking about Hosea 4:1. Just applying this to America. All right. Hosea 4:1, it says, "Hear the word of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, you children of Israel. For the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, have a controversy with the inhabitants of the land." See? Because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of the Most High in the land. Right? By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out in blood toucheth blood, right? So this place has to go. Okay, so again, this is another form of them, as I was saying, of them trying to reestablish, so-called Edomite supremacy. That's all it's about, man. Okay, and it's not going to work. It's over, man. Nothing they can do. America's going down the drain. Okay, the system is going to collapse, and all of these Edomites, these far-right Edomites that believed in Trump, okay, they see that they've been betrayed. Trump is down with the elites. He's forwarding the agenda of the elites to bring in this beast system, the technocrats. All right, his administration was never about America first, and this is what all his fan base found out. This is why MAGA fell apart. All right, I did the video the other day, a few days ago, going into what's her name, Marjorie Taylor Greene. That was a part of his MAGA campaign, and she pretty much exposed him. And she said, "Look, we can't." She said that Trump said that, "Look, we can't, we can't unleash these files because a lot of my friends will get hurt." All right, so like I said, America is completely cooked. Right? Let's play a little bit more, and then we'll get to the main point here. Right?
Recently had a really interesting poll, I thought, about the role of religion in U.S. life. They found that 61% of Americans thought that a religion is losing influence in U.S. life, and 37% about a third, a little over a third, say religion in the U.S. is gaining influence in U.S. life. How would you answer that question?
Well, I think I would answer that question that it's both. I think in many ways, one of the things that motivates an event like today is that there is a sense that Christians who fall under the label of MAGA Trumpism are the minority in this country. And so when you are the minority, you are always preaching a gospel and telling a story that this country needs more religion. It needs more faith. It needs to be rededicated back to God. And what they mean by that is this country needs to be rededicated to the one narrow, myopic vision we have of God, and everything else is understood to be sinful or wayward or something else. In addition, I would say that the idea that religion is gaining more influence in this country comes from the fact that many of us, the majority of us as Americans, whether people of faith, people of no faith, people of minoritized religion, we see how this administration is imposing religion by way of events like this one. And it's doing so in a way that seems to constrict the authority of we the people in the favor of an administration that wants all of the authority in the name of God. If you represent God and God is the one who leads the country, then you can speak for God over the voice of the people. And I think that's what many people are noticing.
Brad Onishi, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a hypocritical nation, man. All right. Destined for destruction. But anyway, I just wanted to play that, just show you the madness from these Edomites, man. All right. But I want to get into the main point here, right? Let's pull this up. Because like I've been doing lessons on this topic, we're focused on this 250-year marker here, right? And I thought this was heavy when I came across this video right here from Kim Iverson. It's entitled, "If Iran War Doesn't End Soon, America Collapses by July 4th. And July 4th is exactly that 250-year marker of America's existence. You see? So again, the average empire survives for 250 years. Is America at death's door? See? So how spiritual is this? Right? So let's check this out. Right?
All right, we are joined by Dave Hodges, independent journalist, former award-winning psychology professor, and the host of the Common Sense Show. Dave, you say that if the war in Iran doesn't end by Memorial Day, then we're going to see the decline of the U.S. at the 4th of July.
These are approximation figures, but people got to realize oil tankers move at about 5 to 10 miles an hour. So they can take 3 months in transit, and if they have any stops, it can even be longer. We're living right now on borrowed oil. And here's something that doesn't get explained in the mainstream media properly. People say, oh, we're oil independent. Well, it's true. We have more oil than we can consume on a daily basis. But a lot of that oil is heavy crude, and a lot of our refineries aren't set to handle that. So we import better quality oil from the Middle East that we use domestically. We export a lot of the heavy crude. But if that oil is not coming to us through the Strait of Hormuz, which is 95% closed and has been since February 28th, then we have to rely on our oil reserves or the tankers that are in transit right now from the time of delivery prior to the war starting to now. And we're reaching that point over the next 7 to 10 days. We're reaching the point where we're living on totally borrowed oil. And the government's not going to let its strategic oil reserves become seriously depleted, because what if China gets aggressive with Taiwan? The military will need that oil. And I think we're looking at the very strong possibility that if we don't resolve this by the end of this month, by the end of June, July 4th, in that time frame, we might start to see roving blackouts. We're going to see shortages. And if diesel goes above $6.50, I've had truckers tell me this by the dozens, that their drop dead price is $6.50. What happens to the just-in-time deliveries for medicine and food to the retail outlets if they're not delivering? I mean, we're reaching a real crisis point, and it won't come progressively, Kim. There'll be a point, and this is what economists have explained to me, there'll come a point when all these factors come together, and you might go to bed on Friday and wake up to a different world on Monday.
Yeah, see, this is the spirit, see? So again, that 250-year marker is going to bring in that collapse, okay? And see, meanwhile, you got these devils trying to revamp and, bring a prayer rededication to America and all of that madness. It's not going to work. You see what I'm saying? There's nothing they can do. This is the will of the Most High, and I just want to add on to that because, you're talking about this oil shortage, right? So this is from NewsTarget.com. It says, why the coming engine oil shortage could cripple transportation. You see, as he was just talking about. So if transportation is crippled, all right, stores are not going to get food. Like he was talking about, certain places are not going to receive medicine and supplies. It says the engine oil crisis is closer than you think, right? Matter of fact, let's just summarize it real quick. Save some time here, right? See what we get. Okay, bear with me. So it says imminent engine oil crisis, supply chain reductions, major automotive brands and retailers, rumored to include Honda, Nissan, and AutoZone, have reportedly warned dealers of imminent supply cuts to brand name engine oils by up to 50% in early 2026. Geopolitical cause. The crisis is driven by a conflict in the Middle East that has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz due to Iranian attacks and halted maritime shipping. Infrastructure damage. Severe missile and drone strikes on Al Jubail, a major industrial complex in Saudi Arabia, have permanently damaged oil and gas wells, preventing a quick recovery even if a ceasefire occurs, right? It says severity. The International Energy Agency states that the current Gulf energy shock surpasses the 1970s oil crisis and 2022 gas crisis combined. Insurers have already canceled war risk coverage for vessels crossing the Strait of Hormuz, so it's going to get bad. Okay? Let me get in that was it 2nd Ezra 6? Bear with me. 2nd Ezra 6 and 22, right? Okay, 2nd Ezra 6 and 22. And it reads, it says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty, right? So this is all the result of that, man. Supplies are not going to get to where they need to go because of the lack of oil and gas. It's going to cripple the economy. All right? We see it coming here, man. See that? Here's another one real quick before we go back. This is from the telegraph.co.uk. Oil supplies depleting very fast, warns energy chief. Let's see what we get from this real quick before we go back to the video. All right? Famines, shortages, right? It's all coming. Right? Let's see what we get here. Same thing. Geopolitical conflict and global energy crisis, Strait of Hormuz blockade. The ongoing U.S.-Israel war with Iran has effectively blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, halting normal shipping for an artery that usually handles 20% of global oil exports. Fewer than 29 Iranian tankers have crossed since March 1st, leaving roughly 100 stranded. Right? It says, let's see what else we can get. Rapidly depleting reserves. International Energy Agency, IEA Chief Faith B-Roll warned that commercial oil inventories are depleting rapidly, leaving only, quote, several weeks worth. Emergency strategic releases of 2.5 million barrels per day are sustaining the market, but are finite. Let's see what else. Yeah, that's it, man. So you get it. What more can we say? Let's go back. Matter of fact, before we go back, let's get a scripture here. Okay. This is 1 Thessalonians 5 and 1. It says, but of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord, Yahushua shall come as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they should not escape. So like we were just going through earlier here, this whole 250-year prayer rededication is just another form of peace and safety. Okay, so we know that sudden destruction is soon to follow, and this is what we're reading about here. Okay, so as they're praying for America to and try to revamp, this Edomite Christian supremacy nonsense, hey, this place is getting ready to fall. Okay, so let's go back.
I just wonder how we're going to get out of this. It's like I hear you. I understand there's some serious implications here for the economy. Obviously, I think Trump knows this as well. But getting out of this seems really, really challenging because Iran really does seem to have the upper hand, and they're using it, right? They're not really giving Trump an out, and Trump needs to save face somehow. I mean, there cannot be. He's not really able to end this war without saving face, and it doesn't seem like Iran is going to let him at this point. I mean, they might, but they would have to have a motivation to do that. And I think in their mind, they would think, well, if we allow him to save face somehow, like they've done in the past, then this will just keep happening again and again. And so I think they're probably having a big struggle and conversations and debates inside of their own hierarchy there in Iran. That's like, are we going to let this happen to us again or not? And I think the answer for most of them is no, we're never going to let this happen to us again.
I would respond this way. A very astute reporter off camera, so we don't know who it was, asked President Trump, and this is played all over, are you going to enlist the help of President Xi in ending the war in Iran? He goes, well, we don't need China for that. We're not going to do that. We've got it under control. We don't have it under control. And I can tell you, Kim, I am convinced, and it's my strong belief based on what I know, that their number one topic right now is stopping the war in Iran. And I'm sure the Trump card, no pun intended here, he's telling Xi, we can shut the whole thing down. If you don't help us get Iran to stop this, and you're their major ally, we can shut the whole thing down. And I think that's the major point of discussion behind closed doors. And obviously the second point of discussion will be what kind of trade and barter are we going to do for Taiwan? I don't think we would see a direct giveaway of Taiwan and we tell China, go ahead and invade. But we could do things like cut back on offensive weapons to Taiwan and make them more vulnerable that way over a period of time. And I think that's probably the second focus of their discussion. And then third, what we're hearing about in the media is probably accurate too. What are they going to charge for tariffs? What are our trade agreements going to be? Is China going to buy all these soybeans? But the major deal right now, I guarantee behind closed doors, is what's going to happen with this war. And Xi and Trump.
What can China even do?
Well, I think China can tell Iran at some point, back down or we're going to join the U.S. And I think that would make Iran capitulate. I think that's the only thing that's going to make them capitulate.
But what would motivate China? I mean, China would have to have a real reason to want to do that. And what do you think would be a good enough, I guess, carrot to get China to even want to side with the U.S. on this? I mean, because right now this is benefiting China. The U.S. is entangled in a war, so the U.S. cannot do anything about Taiwan. I mean, that now we are occupied doing some other things. This also benefits Russia in that way as well, right? The U.S. is tied up in its own engagement, its own war. Secondly, this is collapsing the U.S. economy, which only benefits also the Chinese economy. So they're able to rise faster, which they're already going to rise. They're already going to overtake us as the world's biggest economy. But this helps accelerate that. It helps accelerate the collapse of the dollar. I mean, I don't see a motivation for China to say, and right now with the reporting, we don't know. But with the reporting, it just seems like China just said, sure, yeah, good luck. We wish you the best. That's what it kind of sounds like they're saying.
I'm certain, and there are some reports that support this, that China is suffering a degradation too with oil.
Yeah, so you can check the rest of that out. That's the point, man. All right. The point I'm making here, America collapses by July 4th, all right? So everything is tying back to this 250-year marker, right? Job 14:5, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee, Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. NLT. You have decided the length of our lives. You know how many months we will live, and we are not given a minute longer. You see that? So it's all spiritual, man. Okay, the prayer rededication, the collapse of the society, you know, of America by the July 4th, going into the economy, these oil shortages. Okay, a lot is about to happen. See, this is Sirach, or Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 15. It says, the Lord, Yahweh Shai, have plucked up the roots of the proud nations and planted the lowly in their place. The Lord overthrew countries of the heathen and destroyed them to the foundations of the earth. All right, and how much more America? He took some of them away and destroyed them, and have made their memorial to cease from the earth. And that's what the Lord is about to do to the Edomites, do to Babylon. Okay, Jeremiah 18 and 17. His remembrance shall perish from the earth, and he shall have no name in the street. NLT. All memory of their existence will fade from the earth. No one will remember their names. Right? That's the destiny of the Edomite, man. Right? Psalm 34:16. The face of the Lord, Yahweh Shai, is against them that do evil, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. NLT. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil, and will erase their memory from the earth, man. So this is it, right? This is it right here. Okay? Okay, it's death at America's door. See? So it's all the spirit, man. All right, so hey, like I said, our eyes are watching this time point here. A lot's going to happen as we move through the summer going into the fall. All right? Shalom.